So I guess the next question is, so after the Kickstarter, after you've gotten to do what you want to do with Pugmire, what's next for Pugsteady?
I drink.
That sounds good.
Nerdburger, awesome.
Craig said, I'm going to make a point to mention Pugmire on Nerdburger podcast this weekend with Ando.
Nice.
Yes.
You're going to kill him. You're going to kill him.
Tell Ando what he's missing.
Yeah.
Because I gave Ando a chance to play Pugmire last year at AndoCon. And he's like, no, I've got other things I got to do. I don't want to play this game with Sean Fannin, which is much more interesting than your stupid game. And now I'm not going to be there this year.
Man.
And so Ando
missed out.
Man, he just missed out.
I think you two need to have, like, what was the old, like, MTV Battle Royal show?
Oh, Celebrity Deathmatch?
Yes,
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what's coming.
Except no celebrity and no deathmatch. but I mean, after that also...
You two are celebrities to me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, the actual plan is that Kickstarter's going to end. I'm going to be at Concoction, then I'm going to go to GDC. But when I get back from that, we're basically going to sit down, look at what we've actually committed to, look at the budget we actually have, and then start planning from there. From my perspective, everything stems from this book, ultimately. We need to get this book done first. I'm probably going to look at a handful, maybe one or two people to help me out with from the writing side of it. Obviously, we're going to look at some more art because we committed to a whole bunch of new art. See if the artists that I've already worked on this are available again, especially like Claudio Lewis and Johnny Hodgson. They're both fantastic artists that worked on this. I'd love to work with them again. In fact, Claudio did.
I love that.
That one here.
That's awesome.
So I mean, working with some of these great artists again would be great. But then once that book is done, I'm happy with it. Maybe put some material out for the backers to review. If I pick some things around tires, test this bit real quick.
Right.
Then once that's kind of in queue, then I'll go with things like the anthology, the audio drama, and to be fair, I probably will start some of the initial design of the interactive audio drama early, just because that can be a little compartmentalized. But really, it's going to be lots of getting things in order, getting things in place, and seeing what we can do. I mean, if there's a chance for, like, I can hire like bigger name actors for audio dramas, like some people who've done a lot of video game work. I would like to explore that if the money makes sense, if we can do that.
Right.
If there's money to get the anthology into more and more places than just an ebook, we can explore that. But because I have a ton of people ask me, it's like, I want to work on this, I want to work on that, and work with you. It's like, it's great, but I can't make any of those decisions until it's done. I need to know exactly how much money I have, because, again, I've seen so many Kickstarters where it's like, we're going to get started on this right now, and then it turns out that was actually a bad choice because that money was needed someplace else to help another piece. So it comes down to, okay, getting the thing we agreed to, the thing that everyone's backing, can we get the core book done in a good place, into people's hands, in a timely fashion? Once all those questions are green lights across the board, everything else and everything committed to, and figure out what makes sense for there. And okay, here's the bare minimum we can approve. Oh, well, we have a little extra cash. Maybe we'll hire a couple more stories, or maybe get a little more art, or we'll add extra 20 minutes onto the audio drama. So random things. I mean, we won't know until we have the cash.
I didn't actually put this one on the whatever the title bar at the bottom, but
the box.
So I understand that Pugmire is your main focus, but I'm assuming that there's moments where you just need a slight step back.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, what is it that Eddy does when he does that slight step back from Pugmire to refresh?
Well, the actual answer is do different work, because I'm working like 60 hours a week most weeks. Because like right now, as I mentioned, I'm one of the writers for Futurama Game of Drones, and so that's going to be launching soon. I don't know if I can say when, but so there's a lot of we need to get stuff done for that. So that's a big focus.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I actually just decompress and I'm done, I'm still working in a lot of ways, because I mean, it's fun. I play Steam games, and I deconstruct them and think about how they're put together, because I'm still heavily involved in the video game industry. That is an amazing picture of a cat that I don't know if anyone can see.
I'm gonna pull it up over here.
Yeah, well, while you're doing that, I also look at I was the audio drama. I watch TV. I go to cons. I talk to people. It's weird because like I love what I do, and so in one respect, from one perspective, I'm always working. I'm always playing games. I'm always writing. I'm always reading. I'm always doing the research. So a lot of things that I do for fun that I can also say is research.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm also starting to do things like I'm teaching myself how to cook. Learning how to cook.
Useful skill in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've never cooked. I'm 40 years old. Finally, maybe I should figure out how to actually feed myself. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Beer.
I enjoy travel. I mean, there's lots of other things I enjoy doing. DDP yoga. I mean, stuff like that. So.
Real quick, here's the cat picture that we're talking about. It's amazing.
It's very distinguished.
I'm gonna have to resize it real quick, but
just put it over Eddie's head.
Right.
Look at that.
Nice.
Interestingly, this artist, who is it? Oh, Ian Blinder, excellent. This artist was one I saw very early on when I was working on Pugmire, and was very influential in my vision for the Monarchy Smell. It's I want to say Ukrainian artist.
Oh wow.
But he does all these kind of military portraits with different cat heads.
Mm-hmm.
There's this amazing one that's like he has a turban on and has this great kind of button Russian coat, and there's this one with the kind of ornate, almost Italian or Spanish style, and immediately I was like, this is the Monarchy Smell. This because again that kind of blend of fashion and class with military bearing that I just thought was so interesting and compelling. So it's a great picture, but it's also actually is one of the references, inspirations I used when I was developing the cats.
Awesome.
So I'm curious. So when you're doing playtest for Pugmire, so obviously probably like good and bad things happen in terms of gameplay. How do you kind of I'm trying to think how to phrase it. How do you know when something works well or doesn't work well when you're doing a gameplay test with other people to go back and fix?
It's such a good question. Because I've been on both sides of good and bad playtests, and I think one of the worst playtests you can do is just tell me what happens. Because you're gonna get a whole bunch of random information. Granted, I do that now I'm doing it now for early access, but also early access is pretty far down the road. So I do want the random information at this stage because I know there's gonna be stuff that I haven't paid attention to. I want the stuff like if you put this power with this power and you add this component, you destroy the world. Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Thanks for pointing it out. I should make that not happen. But when I'm doing the playtests, like the alpha and early beta playtests I did, excuse me, I always go with game plan. I always go in, okay, these are the things that I want to make sure are working right.
Yep.
And I don't think that you can really playtest a game until you know what your game is supposed to be. In my case, I had a one-sentence statement that was, this is what Pugmire is. It is a, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, it's a family-friendly game about cooperation and action based on old-school fantasy rules.
Okay.
And so it's like, if there's anything in the game that's invalidating that core sentence, it needs to change. That was the Turbine, because that's the Turbine picture that I was talking about. If you want to put that one up. So when you're doing a playtest, there's two different kinds of playtests. There's system playtests. Yes, this is the cat I was talking about with the turban, the kind of full coat, which is amazing.
And there's wow, look at that one.
Yeah.
That looks dangerous. Don't screw with me, man.
So this is amazing.
I'll bite your fingers off.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So if you have a kind of a system playtest where it's like, okay, let's just go through a bunch of combats and make sure the combat is working the way I want to. But then there's a holistic playtest where it's like, okay, start to finish, is this working the way I want to? And the way you can tell is like, are players reacting the way that you want to? Because ultimately, when you're designing a game, you're crafting experience.
Right.
You want people to experience the game a certain way and to react a certain way. You don't force them in a channel. You want to encourage them to go on the channel by themselves. Because everyone hates railroading. Everyone hates, it's like, the invisible walls where, okay, there's this wide open field in the video game space, but everything else is a wall next to this one road. Everyone hates that. But if it's Lego games do this really well. It's like there's all these little tabs that you fall down, and you collect those tabs, and it leads you towards, I want those things.
Yep.
Right.
And then you end up in a space where the game designer wants you to be, and that's where good game design goes. It encourages you to go the way. So if you're playtesting it, and players are not reacting the way it is, okay, why is that? And usually you can pretty quickly narrow it down to a system. In fact, this is how the fortune system was designed, because I had originally a much more common, everyone gets hero points and whatnot, and players were always wanting to give each other stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm like, why am I getting in their way? And so originally I had a rule for, okay, they can trade it, or there's a certain cost for trading it. And finally I was like, no, let's just put it into a bowl and see what happens. And then that worked out much better, because then it was, if I take a stumble, you can benefit down the road.
Mhm.
And players started inherently playing in that way because of the way the game. But also, especially for role-playing games, it's really hard to divorce mechanics and setting. There's always the kind of things that you can play in role-playing games and your rules. I don't think that's completely true. I think it's mostly true. But I think that the rules and the setting do have to coexist. And again, with Pugmire, I was like, I wanted to encourage people to cooperate. And I had some vague ideas, but I wanted to kind of test a fairly vanilla system first.
Mhm.
But people really gravitated to the be a good dog part of the code of man. It became a rallying cry. It became a reason for dogs to talk, and became a watchword. And so by having those words in their head and in front of them as part of the game world, they were more inclined to be good dogs. They were more inclined to do good things in a way, to be heroic in a way that a lot of other role-playing games almost have to force the players to act and tell them you're playing it bad unless you're being a hero. I mean, you've talked about a lot of role-playing games. It's like, heroes do this and heroes do that. Please, Lord God, be a hero.
Right.
But because I have a setting where it's like going, no, be a good dog. It's like, I should be a good dog. Yeah, that's what good dogs do. And so they started naturally going that channel. So I wanted to take other stuff out of their way. It's like, that's where they want to go. So let's take the stuff in the system that's stopping them from doing that, and give them a reward for doing more of that. And that's where a lot of the core loop of game design happens. It's like, fine, figure out where your players want to go, give them reasons to go there, take stuff out of the way that stops them from going there. And that's a good chunk of game design.
So I think one of the biggest questions for any game designer out there is, how do you control the, I guess, potential fear of, this is my baby, I've been working on it, and I'm giving it out into the world, and maybe people either interpret it or play it differently than you envisioned?
You suck it up and you deal with it. Because I have certainly seen people run my games, and they've invited me to play, and I played them, and then I had to go, because it's like, you're clearly having fun, but I'm going to stab some people because that's how I want it to go. But the reality is I try to think of it a lot like doing something like a television series, or even painting a painting. Because if you're experiencing non-interactive arts or non-interactive entertainment, you can't tell the audience what to think. They're going to come away with it.
Right.
And they're going to have their own opinions on it. And that may or may not match up to what the writers or the producers were anticipating. Like, if you look at a lot of the early communications between fans and writers for shows like Lost, the Lost is a very different way where they were going, and they ended up kind of leaning into what the fans expected. I think a little bit's their detriment, but I mean, ultimately, the fans shaped where they were going, because the fans were like, this is what the show is, and no, that's not what we're making. But at a certain level, when you are a creator, whether it's a game designer or an artist, that's going to happen. That's part of the process, and that's a good thing. From games specifically, or any interactive medium, you're also at a remove, because what you're doing is you're crafting the tools to make experience, and the players come in and take those tools and make their own experience from that. And so not only do you have that natural kind of distance between a viewer and artist, but also you have a piece in the middle that is the only piece that each of you are touching on. So I can't even tell you, this is what the dogs did and how they do it and why they do it. I can only tell you, here's some stuff that makes dogs do things, and you go, my dogs go over here and do this thing. And it's like, that's awful, but you're having fun. So, and that's the thing, is that as a designer, you have to at some point come to terms with either A, people just aren't going to understand what you're doing with your game, and you have to come to terms with that. Or B, you force them into your understanding of the game, which is going to make them resent that. So, like, Pugmire's first example is, I don't think of it as a funny game. I think it is lighthearted. I think there's certainly potential for humor. And I've leaned into that humor because I don't know about you guys, but when my gaming group is, they can't go 5 minutes without cracking a joke. So it's like you might as well here's all the dog puns you can have.
Right.
Enjoy them because in 3 hours you're going to be crying over someone's funeral because that's the kind of game I run. I run games that are very kind of that's really funny. Wait a minute. A perfect example, the adventure at Midwinter Gaming Convention in Milwaukee, I ran some games there, and the long adventure short. One of the pieces of it was that one of the dogs had a cat valet, cat servant, and he was arrested, ultimately for the crime of being a cat. And so they spent the entire adventure on trying to get this cat, freed, and there's a nefarious conspiracy. But at the end, one of the players came to me, he's like, that was a game about racial profiling, wasn't it? And it's like, yes, it was. And I think that this is a game that has the potential for that depth. But I also know, as a designer, that a lot of people are going to go, I'm a Wyvern with Max, woo! Boom! That's the beginning, middle, and end of what they're going to do for their game.
Right.
And that's awesome. I think that's great that they can do that. I want to make sure that they have the ability to do that. But if they want to go deeper, the potential for depth is there. So you can't tell people you're playing the game wrong. What you can say is, here's all the possibilities for my game. I design it and play it at this level, but there's all these different levels above it or on the other sides of it that you can engage on if you want to. Vampire the Masquerade is where I learned a lot of this on, is because everyone talks about vampires, this great sensual game of personal horror, but there are noteworthy number of people, myself included at times, who play it as superheroes with fangs. Sometimes I really enjoy that style of gameplay. And so it's like, it's great that my girlfriend's dead and I'm low on blood and I'm turning into a monster, but really I'm going to punch that guy in the face until he explodes. And some people really want to play that, and so I'm telling them that they're playing it wrong means it goes, well, then your game is stupid, I'll play something else. I'll go play Pathfinder or whatever. So instead it's saying, cool, I'm glad you're really enjoying that. Here are some more resources to help you play with that. But a good chunk of our game design is actually over here in this space. Feel free to have fun over here, but we're going to continue to go in this direction. And the same thing with Pugmire is like, certainly the humor is going to always be there, and the dog jokes and the cat jokes and all those things are going to be there. But if people are going to bring a lot of that to the table themselves, I don't have to provide that. I can focus on some of the interesting political intrigue and religious connotations and some of the deeper potentiality for that. And people will go, well, that's cool, but I want to kill zombies. Here are the zombies. Feel free and enjoy your game, and you will have a hell of a lot of fun. And I think I'm glad that you're enjoying yourself. So it comes down to the only way as a designer you can measure success is, are people enjoying it? And if they're enjoying it, then you can't ultimately say you're enjoying it wrong. All you can say is they're having a good time with something you've created.
Out of curiosity, how long have you been working on Pugmire?
I've been working on it pretty consistently for a little over a year. I've been working it off and on for 2.5 years. Basically, I wrote a short story because my dogs drive me crazy. I had 2 pugs at the time, and we were in a 1-room apartment. And my main laptop had died, so all I had was a Chromebook. And the dogs were barking at everything. It's like, someone made a noise outside. Bark, 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 bark. There's a fly in the wall. Bark, 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 bark. Nothing's happening. Bark, 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 bark. I'm bored. Bark, 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 bark. And it's like, shut up. And so just to keep myself sane, I started writing a story about dogs barking at invisible demons. And because I'm a huge nerd, they had swords and axes and magic.
Of course.
Because why not? And then I went back to it like a couple months later. I was like, there's actually something here. So I showed it to a couple of friends, and I'm like, yeah, you should do that. And so I played around with some, D&D stuff. The idea of, okay, here's 3 pages of rules of doing dogs in D&D. That was like what I figured it would be. And then I was approached to do an anthology, and I was like, I wanted something different than just, yet another. I mean, I love writing noir, crime, and horror stories, but I was like, I want to try something different. I've done a lot of those recently. And so I found this old story, and that story didn't work, but I made up a whole new story using those characters, which became The Winter of Man, which was in the Sojourn anthology Volume 2. And I showed that to a bunch of beta readers like I usually do. And they were all like, you have to do more with this. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, that's very nice of you. And then like a few of them were like, no, seriously, when are you going to do more of this?
Right.
I will thug a person if you're going to get more of this stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so they became very, very passionate. It's like, whenever you do the role-playing game, not if, when you do the role-playing game, we'll be there. And I'm just like, I'm not doing the role-playing. I guess I'm doing a role-playing game, right? Some of it was, benevolent bullying. But a lot of it was, I think, that the world ended up being a place where a lot of bits and pieces of ideas I've had for like most of my life I could put in. For example, I've always had an idea of doing a Roadhouse, Jeeves and Wooster style pastiche in fantasy setting. And I just never get it to work from a typical genre fantasy D&D style setting. Just never seemed to work right. And then Pugmire, it's like, perfect, boom! You have the comedy of that dynamic makes a lot of sense in a slightly lighthearted world. Lots of things like, I always wanted to do a Thundarter Barbarian style game. Well, boom, here's, Pugmire. It works perfectly for that stuff. So a lot of these bits and pieces that were in my head now all gelled together and made sense. And so in some respects, I'm working on it for a chunk of my life. But in terms of actually, I need to start making something that I could then put in front of people to ultimately sell them a book, probably about a year and a half.
Random question. Do you watch wrestling by any chance?
Oh, yes.
Okay, no, for real. Okay, your whole thing about gameplay and basically trying to pigeonhole people and you're supposed to play this way versus that way.
John Cena.
It's wrestling to a T. No,
it's
not John Cena. It's actually Roman Reigns.
Well, yeah,
because you just had Daniel Bryan retire, right? And they're basically trying to, and he was the organic version of what you're saying.
Yes.
And he was very organically, he pushed basically the game developers, Vince McMahon, to react to it, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're trying to do the reverse with Roman Reigns. They're trying to force him down people's throats to be the same the same exact kind of modular character or creation.
Right.
But he's not.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very good point, because I've certainly used wrestling terms a lot because it has a great vocabulary in terms of how to handle interactive media. And one of them is heat. The idea is that you're getting attention from the audience. And I use John Cena a lot is because John Cena gets booed and cheered pretty consistently on a regular basis. But
Yes.
when like you said, he's being jammed up people's throats as a hero like 6-7 years ago. And then people started booing him as a result of that. Mm-hmm. John recognized this and started playing to that.
Oh, yes.
Without becoming a bad guy character. And I think the same thing as a game designer. It's like doing the fact that people are engaged in what I'm doing, whether they like it or don't like it, shows that they're interested. And they're involved in the product. They're involved, in this case, the product of the wrestler. So having that heat is like, people who are, like, as long as they're playing the game, as long as they're into it, because there are people who play games just to hate on them. I mean, like the infamous video of, I've been playing Skyrim for 200 hours and it's terrible. And it's just like, what? You played it for 200 hours!
Why are you playing that?
After a year and a half of playing, I've decided this actually is crap.
It's like those beta testers who just play the game just so that they can just dump in the chat. They're like, God, this is terrible. I should be playing World of Warcraft. Go play World of Warcraft. For the love of God, leave now.
Right, but the thing is that as hard as, and certainly it's hard for me sometimes to look at that, but I also have to say they're engaged.
Right.
Their level of engagement is they express it through frustration and through outrage, but there's still engagement there. And as a designer, at a certain point in time, you have to accept that. One of the things I learned from CCP was watching the EVE Online communities because, boy, howdy, do they have opinions.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they're engaged. I mean, yes, there's a 50-page flame war thread about how the price of monocles, but by God, they're engaged in that particular dynamic right now.
Yep.
I don't play EVE, but it sure as hell is interesting to follow.
It is fascinating to watch. Much like an explosion, it's really cool to watch from a distance.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people are really into it, and lots of my friends are really into it. And it's like one of those. I don't share the things that they enjoy it for the reasons that I don't find enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they do enjoy it is infectious. Again, like watching, it's like I don't. It's not a game I would play regularly, but I love the fact that you're so excited by this. And as a designer, you have to kind of embrace that. It's like, this guy really has a very strong opinions about why spears require 2 hands as opposed to 1 hand. He's very, very passionate about that. But the fact that he's telling a lot of people about that shows that he's engaged. He's interested. He wants this game to be better. And he's expressing that in a way to show to people that I want this to improve. It seems minuscule, but to that person, it's very important. To say that I really want to see cats in the game. That's not like saying your game is stupid because they have cats. It's because I want this game to grow and to be inclusive of this thing that I also find interesting.
Right.
And sometimes the answer is no, that's not going to work. Not for cats. But sometimes as a designer, you have to go. This is, again, that guiding point. This is where I need the game to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've made these decisions. It has to go in this particular direction. But I hear what you're saying, and I respect the fact that you're passionate about this, even if I don't agree with what you feel needs to be done. And so many times, I found that just saying, I hear you, I respect you, I don't agree, they'll go, okay, well, thank you for listening to me. And they're still being engaged with it. They just want to be heard because they're excited and passionate. So it's heat, man. It's like, they love you or hate you, but if they're talking about you, if they're into it, if they're really paying attention, then you got them on the hook.
You don't want X-Packy.
Yeah, you don't want X-Pac.
That's what it is.
You don't want this thing, get off my screen.
Go away, yeah.
Right, and then it's like, oh, this is stupid.
So, Eddie, I've got one more question for you, and
Sure.
I'm sure that everyone who's actually seen the Kickstarter page has this question, and that is, how crazy of a taskmaster is Murray?
Oh, he's vicious. I mean, he will cough at me. It's like, hey, I need something done. Hey. In my office, there's his little bed next to my desk, and so most times he'll spin around and fall asleep, and he's fine. Sometimes he snores so loud that people on the Skype calls are like, "Is that your dog?" It's like, no, it's not the building falling down. It's just my dog sleeping. But every once in a while, he's like, hey, it's random o'clock, and I need to go outside, so I don't care what you're doing. I gotta go. And, I mean, I have gotten off calls people in Germany. It's like, hey, guys, I'm ready to talk about this, but my dog needs to go walking, so I'm done. I'm out. I gotta go. Bye. So, yeah, he's pretty harsh, but we make it through. He helps push the company along.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, all right. I want to thank you, Eddie, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It has been awesome. Everyone, of course, go to Kickstarter. Check out Pugmire. It's almost 1,000 times over the initial goal.
Quick, Ian, what percentage is it again? 900 something?
995% or something.
Ian will tell me.
Yeah, it's.
He's already run my interview, so it's.
I think it's like 950. Where'd it go?
955. There it is.
955. So. There you go. Once again, thank you so much, Eddie. And hopefully everyone out there can enjoy Pugmire in some shape or form. I actually am probably going to try to enjoy it in like every single form possible, be it the anthology.
Hopefully there'll be lots of them.
The audio. I'm very interested to see because I like the concept of continuously building on. Here's the set universe. Now let's add to it that's going to be beneficial for this universe with the audio drama and all that stuff. So I'm going to be basically bouncing all over the place. And of course, I had a lot of fun with the audio drama that I did do previously. So I'm excited about that, and of course all the anthologies and all the art. So, anyways, thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. So for myself, Charlie, Zealeus, and Eddie, it's been a pleasure to give you this amazing Pugmire interview. Be on the lookout for it to be online. I'll try to chop it up as best as I can so that people can get it in bite-sized chunks because that seems to do, better for people. Everyone doesn't want to sit through. I mean, seriously, you want to sit through this entire thing, but if you,
I'm gonna go home and watch
it.
I'm gonna read it to my cat and sit in front of it. Listen to it.
Your cat's gonna be pissed. Anyways, thank you for tuning in,
Sure
and we'll see you next Thursday, which will be just mere hours before Zealeus and I jump in a car and go up to Chattanooga.
Woo!
Woo! So, thanks, guys.